Hello, and welcome back to the Practical Shaman Podcast. I'm Renee Baribeau, and I have a very special guest today with a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and just stay tuned. Levi Barker was a former tech entrepreneur who has been working on himself with the aid of Iboga and other plant medicines for the last 6+ years. Since being a young boy, Levi has always felt drawn to helping bring out the best in people. After an on and off training for a 3-year period while managing his business, Levi listened to the soul and dedicated himself to training to work with Iboga. After training nonstop at an Iboga Wellness Center for 18 months, Levi went to Africa to be initiated and also graduated by a Bitwi shaman to be an Iboga provider. Now, a lot of my fans out there know about my shaman self, and a lot of my shaman self fans know about that I work in addiction treatment. And what I don't always share, because it's in my world, it's not your business, but that I started to stop using drugs and alcohol very young in my life when I was 30. And about 15 years ago, I found myself working with a Santo Daime shaman in church, which really took those last remnants of imprints that were stuck, that I couldn't, no matter how hard I tried to be good, how many amends I made, how much homeopathic remedies I took. And I didn't do medication after I found an Ayurvedic doctor soon after I stopped drinking who balanced my organs. So I took a more spiritual, natural path through this. But at 25 years into my recovery, there was parts of myself that were still seeking, broken, acting out. And it was through the plant medicine work that I really got to the essential nature of these, so that I was able to bring in the wind work for the book Winds of Spirit. And, that I live 90% of my time, maybe 95 even, that I live my life in balance, peace, add happiness, and I'm of service to other people. And so whatever your recovery slants are out there, the proof for me is in the pudding of how I show up. I help other addicts. I help other people. And, now with the Winds of Spirit, I'm getting a message out to the world that, wouldn't have been possible had I not done this last crucial piece of healing. So welcome, Levi. I think you're on mute. Oh, there you go. You're organized.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I read through your website, and first of all, why don't you tell people what Iboga is and how the plant found you? Because I'm sure that it was a little bit of both, that you were looking and it was seeking you at the same time.
Absolutely. Iboga definitely calls people. So, and yeah, looking back at my own life, I definitely see I had to go through some deep experiences, not all on the bright side to eventually find Iboga and get there. So Iboga, when you're reading my bio there, you talked about the Bwiti, by the initiated or trained by a 10th generation Bwiti shaman. So Bwiti is, in our tribe, is somebody that uses Iboga to study life. And so we see Iboga as a tool for how to live. And so we all have different questions about life, why we're here. We all have to manage our own mind, how we treat ourselves, how we, perceive and understand the world. And so in our tradition, it's really about using Iboga as a tool to teach us how to work through the process of being a human. And so, yeah. And so I grew up on my mom's side anyway, is a pretty rough family, a lot of drugs and alcohol. Although there was a lot of love, there was a lot of chaos as well. And so my grandfather and his two brothers were heroin addicts from a very young age, from the time like 14, 15 years old. And so that went all the way until he was in his 60s and passed away. And so growing up around that, definitely had some influence on me. And I remember from even a very early age thinking at some point, not necessarily heroin, but like, wondering, what that was they were taking and how it made them feel. And it must be good. So, looking back from a very young age, I developed this belief system that, almost like it was part of, my destiny, or I even took it further as the years grew on, thinking that was part of my genetics, and it was just passed down to me, and there wasn't really much I could do. And so sure enough, the mind's a very powerful thing. I fulfilled that prophecy, and started with breaking my wrist snowboarding and having to have a surgery and getting prescribed Percocet, and just enjoying the way that made me feel, being able to, escape myself, just numb my emotions. I was going through, high school, where I think we know it all, but, actually this is after high school. So I was just in college, and started, liking that and being able to escape in ways that other drugs that I had tried didn't do it. And, so those ran out. So then you start looking for them on the street a bit. And, then the first time you figure out that you're actually physically addicted to something, and, you think you have the flu, and then realize it's not the flu, or the worst flu of your life, you realize it's not that, you do the opiates, and all of a sudden immediately everything's good again. And so that progressed for many years, from, like a lot of people, starting on pills and, getting stronger pills, and then, then it goes to heroin. So I went through a lot of ups and downs for, a good 9-10 years of struggling with addiction. Sometimes I keep it together okay, other times, absolute, in the bottom, living in my van as a young guy, just sleeping outside of the parking lot of where I worked at the time, and wake up and go to the faucet and, shower off of the faucet in the morning and walk into work, always the first one there. And so that went on for a long time, and went through many different periods of just ups and downs. And at one point I asked a friend of mine, who just very dear friend, even to this day, if there was something that could help with the opiates, the hard opiates that were so hard to get off of. And he mentioned Iboga. And when I heard Iboga, I knew immediately there was something there for me. And he has, probably at least one, he probably has a little bit of, almost any psychoactive plant medicine you could imagine. So he had some, and he sent it to me. And at this time I was living in Nicaragua with my now wife, and ended up doing a home detox, which, if you're listening out there, isn't recommended.
Wow.
I had to do what I had to do. And so I was, I was at the point where it was just, it had to end. So I was willing to do whatever I could to escape that. And I did. Iboga is one of the only thing in the world that actually will alleviate, to a large degree, 80-90% of opiate withdrawal symptoms. And so, time still has to pass during that, but you're not there shaking in bed and, throwing up on yourself. And it just really cuts down a lot of those symptoms that are so hard for opiate addicts to get through. And so that I went through that, and but then came out of that, but realized I was really raw. I hadn't felt emotions in so long, and had been shoving them down for so long, that all of a sudden I was feeling again. And especially for opiate addicts, they, after they get done with any sort of detox, it's really, crying a lot, and feel depressed. And so I went through a period of that, even though I was physically clean. And then by forces of nature, I met our teacher, That's when I started that 10th generation Bwiti shaman, and that's when I started to really even look deeper in myself and what was going on.
So did you ever have to use heroin again, or was that your turning point?
That was the turning point. That was, never used heroin again. And it wasn't always easy, but, I did manage to stay physically clean from the opiates.
So you said something, and for my good luck, that one day when I was in cooking school in my 20s in New York, I was riding in a cabin. The girls wouldn't share their heroin with me, and I know now that was spirit looking out for me to do something that I couldn't do for myself, because I have an older sister who used heroin into her 60s, and so this craving to get away from ourselves and stuff. But tell me about this withdrawal or this kind of. So Iboga relieved the symptoms. Now I understand you're saying that there's a difference between the Iboga and the ibogaine, which they're working on legalizing in the United States at the moment. But that then you were left sitting there raw. So with that rawness, you were desperate enough to do something, or once the symptoms were gone, you had that possibility of doing something?
Yeah, so I was just fresh, almost like I hadn't aged emotionally during the time of the opiates, where I was, was like a little kid still, and just didn't know how to manage, myself, how I viewed the world, and how I looked at myself and perceived the world. And so that was like, starting from scratch. And so for that, Iboga is really an accelerator. Some people may have heard, a night with Iboga is like 10 years of psychotherapy, and it definitely is. So, I met our teacher and started doing what we call psycho-spiritual ceremonies with him. And those are, not to detox or anything, but just to go inward and get answers about your life and your direction. And so Iboga really helped me to, redevelop emotionally, almost, breaks you down to a certain degree where you have to rebuild back up. And that rebuilding process is, it really, after Iboga, things that you don't do right for yourself, things that are hurting you, they hit you that much harder. And so, it's really a guide there, whenever you do mess up, which we all do. It's just, it hits you that much harder where you don't want to do it again. And so I had a long process of several years of just integrating, into myself and the teachings of the medicine. And, one thing I'll say with Iboga, it's not something you do a lot of. You do once, twice, and the integration period is really, really long. And so a lot can happen, from 1 year to the next.
So, and I noticed that on your website, because you have these retreats, and it looks like what you do the Iboga, or people have the opportunity to do it 3 times during this 8-day period. Is that like, can most people do it 3 times, or is it they do it 1 time, or how does that roll?
So it's 2 times while they're here.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say 90% of people do both of them. Now, after the first ceremony, the first time the medicine moves through somebody, it's really just a deep cleanse, physically, spiritually, mentally. So if you were to ask people, say the morning after their first ceremony, if they'll be ready for the next one, 95, 98% of people would say there's no way I'm going to do the next one. And it's a long process, but 90% of people do that. But then once they leave here, maybe 10-15% of people will come back to either reconnect with themselves or the medicine again. But most people just go on living their life and taking what they learned from the medicine and really, living it. And that's what it's about.
And so Personally, I think that this opioid crisis is one of the biggest spiritual plagues of our modern day time, and it's certainly a way of keeping us disassociated from ourselves and more disassociated from nature and each other. And so, I was reading on your website that it says the iboga tends to have the masculine aspects of the plant, whereas for those of you who don't know anything about it, that he says on their website, it says that they feel that the ayahuasca is the more feminine aspect of the medicine plants. And so I have experience with the ayahuasca, but not the iboga. So do you find people tend to lean one way or the other?
Yeah, so generally I would say it is masculine, although there is very feminine parts to the plant as well. And it can be gentle and caressing and really, keep you in a loving place when that's what's needed. So it depends on what somebody needs. And for a lot of us, we do need a stern, very direct lesson on, hey, this is what needs to change. Here's what you should do. And so, the lessons are more direct in that way, I find. They for the big lessons, they're gonna be direct. So I would say, it's a mix of both, but definitely ayahuasca is has a whole lot more feminine to it as well. And I've gotten a ton out of ayahuasca as well. So I think with either medicine you can get what you need to help grow yourself and get where you need to go.
And what do you make of this? And I look at like that right now. There's this that we're decimating the 20 to 30-year-old male population in this country through, and I know our country more than I know other countries, through the opioid crisis and this failure to launch idea. Although I don't see any experience as bad, and I don't see it as a failure. I just see it as an experience. But what do you make of this in your generation? Because you're just probably right around that age group. Why do you think that there's so many young men are struggling right now?
It's a good question. I mean, definitely one of them has to be the access to the opiates and the potency. Whenever, so the whole idea off the opiates, and especially the maintenance opiates, is to have a lifetime customer. No doubt about it. And so, when the pill mills were happening in Florida, they knew exactly what they were doing. Now the government got in the way, and it's more restricted. But those, a very small percentage of those people stopped doing opiates. And so, some of it, we have all these great tools at our disposal in this day and age. A lot of them have to do with technology, but it can also really separate us and also make us really want to compare ourselves to others and what's happening in their lives. It can isolate us. So I definitely see technology as a big one. So we definitely get people here at Iboga Wellness that need a technology detox as well. They just kind of forgot how to be with themselves, and the constant need to distract themselves. I would say, there's definitely a spiritual crisis within the young people today. There's some great ones that have it together, but I would say a very large group is missing some connection with their own life. I think a big part of that in the West is, we have no more traditions. That's why our tradition of the Bwiti is so beautiful. There's a very clear, distinct process from going, say, into manhood or womanhood, and in the West we just don't have that. We go through 14, 15, 16-year-olds or 16 years, and maybe we have a party or something, but no, there's no defining moment where like, hey, now is when you have to start taking care of yourself. So I think, tradition and just, a culture of, getting as many things as you can, or having the most likes or friends on the internet is almost, what a lot of young people see as important. And really, kids are more sensitive these days, that's for sure. The younger kids talk about needing their space and things like that now. When I was really younger, that didn't happen. My space, what? I didn't know I was could even have any. And so that's what we get. A lot of people that come from that generation here and just have never really connected with themselves. Nobody's sat them down and talked to them about life and figuring out what's important for them. So this medicine really is able to teach them about taking care of themselves and being responsible for their own lives, and knowing that throughout this life they're the only thing that they control in this world is themselves. And so this medicine is really about personal responsibility. And humans get in the way, we make our rules and put up obstacles, but us as humans on this planet, when we came here, everything was here for us. Everything that we'll ever need is already here. And so and a lot of that is figuring that out from the inside. Once we figure out that from the inside, then we have the confidence and the tools to go and get the other things we want in life.
I know that's like one of my fondest memories was the day that I realized that I had chased around the world only to find it in my own backyard in the 2 strawberries that I grew. And that's part of 2 strawberries. And it was like this most perfect moment of ever. So tell us who's coming to your clinic. Tell us about the clinic and what you have available there for people who might be seeking what you're offering.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Iboga Wellness Center is the oldest shamanic Iboga retreat center in the West. It was started by a man, Gary Cook. And so him and I, manage it now. Gary's getting a little older. He's 68. And so, we've been friends for a long time, all the way back to the Iboga house days where our teacher used to have a retreat center. And so, we have 7-night, 8-day retreats, and people come here for pretty much any of life's ailments. We don't do active detox work for people that are going through, say, an opiate withdrawal. We recommend them going to something like an ibogaine clinic, or even kicking cold turkey and then coming here. So we certainly get a lot of people that are 2 weeks a month free from drugs. We get a lot of veterans of war, a lot of people that have had some sort of sexual abuse or parental abuse in their past. A big chunk of the people that come here are dealing with some sort of depression, anxiety. At least 60%, and many of them have just stopped their SSRIs or other meds before coming here because they have to have those out of their system before Iboga. A lot of people with sleep problems, and it's amazing with Iboga, you don't sleep a lot while it's in you. So we're up, many times for 24, 36 hours at a time working with this medicine. But somehow the medicine has a way of re-regulating people's sleep cycles. No more nightmares, or no more lying there just with the mind racing and not allowing them to get to sleep. Really people from all walks of life. We've had as young as 14-year-old come here with her mom, up into a 77-year-old woman that's been here. So just all walks of life, all over the globe. Just people, getting that call, like you mentioned, to Iboga, and it's just amazing how consistent this medicine is. If somebody comes for themselves and is willing to work afterwards and do their part, it really is 100% success rate in bettering people's lives.
So you really think that your success rate is like that people who come there and do the work are going back to their lives and having the ability to stay sober and not pick up heroin and other, what about meth, crystal meth? Have you had any results with that?
Oh yeah. You know, that one moves out of a person's system relatively quickly. So they need to have been off it at least 7 to 10 days, and that's plenty of time for the actual drug to move out of their system. But, you know, with them not sleeping, and the crystal meth really wreaks havoc on the mind and dopamine and serotonin. So the Iboga is very good at balancing out and getting everything back to baseline as far as the brain chemistry is involved. And very, very good. And like you said, that the success rate thing, you know, of course there is some people that stop drugs and go back to doing them. But I would say, you know, as far as where they're at in their life with what they needed to learn to get out of the experience, absolutely 100%. It's more so, you know, opiates are such a tough thing to really abstain from for a long time. You know, our friends over at a place called Crossroads and a gentleman named Joseph Barsugli, I know, did a study. He did some research there at an Ibogaine clinic, and I think it was something like, you know, 60% had abstained from opiates for at least a year after their initial treatment, which is...
That's way higher than our rates that we're getting, for sure.
Yeah, it's
we might be getting 30%, you know, and that's of the people who will respond to you. And, you know, so the research is a little bit, you know, because you don't know those other ones. And if they die, then they're certainly not in the research pool. Something that's really important to talk about is the SSRIs that both ayahuasca and Iboga. Before we get to those, we can talk about that. What's the difference between the Iboga and the ibogaine that's going to be licensed here in the United States soon?
So Iboga is the full plant. So it's, I believe it's 12 alkaloids that are in the plant. So when they extract ibogaine, it's just the one alkaloid that they're taking out. And, you know, for more medical-like facilities that ibogaine clinics are, the doctors like being able to be exact with, you know, however many milligrams of ibogaine exactly, and they dose via body weight. And so I think the ibogaine works through a person's body quicker. So for people that have weak bodies from doing a lot of drugs, it goes in, clears out the drugs, but then gets out and allows them to, you know, get back moving around quicker. So Iboga, you know, obviously coming from a shamanic background, we want to work with the full plant. We know that, you know, within nature, there's certain codes to access, you know, to our own being and connect back to nature. And so we, you know, here we work with the full plant via just ground up root bark that we just grind in a coffee grinder very fine and serve that off a spoon. And then we also make an organic total alkaloid extract, which just using white vinegar, and that has all the alkaloids of the plant in it. So it's just like a concentrated version of, you know, the root bark itself. And so that's a lot easier. Sometimes getting those spoonfuls of root bark down can be tough. It's about as tasty as ayahuasca is. So.
Some people, you know, I used to like those Ayurvedic herbs that I would take, and most people didn't. Did you? So.
Wow.
So then you do something like the cactus over in Peru, which is really hard to swallow if you. Did you? So the ibogaine, are they having the same kinds of results, or are they using it more for the detox, or are they using it in conjunction with therapy and other things to keep people clean or, sober.
Yeah, absolutely. The primary, most of them are using it for detox, but absolutely, ibogaine can be used for the other, you know, I guess you could say mental ailments that, depression, anxiety, and traumas. Absolutely, both of them can be used. And, I think, we had a psychiatrist that was recently here. I know he's working a bit with full, ibogaine for some different veterans. And so, yeah, both of them can be used.
How does the tribe feel about, here we go, now there's something's working, the pharmaceuticals come in, they're going to take the one piece that they think is going to be useful. Is there any pushback from the medicine people on this, or how are they feeling about this?
Yeah, so there's a couple angles with that. I think they see it more as a definitely more from a scientific viewpoint. They understand what they're trying to do, although they would probably say that the connections that you get to nature and the spiritual aspects of the medicine might be lost that way. And so, but one thing that is good is ibogaine. A lot of it is synthesized from another plant called Boakanga, which grows quite a bit bigger and is more prevalent than Iboga. So with Iboga, it's Gabon's national treasure, and so they're very strict about who has the Iboga and where it can go and permissions and things like that. And so I would say on one hand that's good. That more people are making ibogaine out of this Boakanga plant, because just now within the last couple of years, a lot of the Gabonese are realizing that Iboga is going to continue growing, so they're starting plantations of it. There's a lot of Iboga medicine just deep in the jungles, and it's hard to access for a lot of people. And so on one hand that's good, us being involved with the Bwiti and we know, when they harvest a plant, they don't kill it. They just cut a couple roots off and, continue to let the plant go. But if everybody was to get ibogaine from Iboga, that would be, that could definitely put some stress on how much of the plant is actually out there. And so, but what's good is in response to that, a lot of people are starting different plantations of this medicine, similar to what happened with ayahuasca, in the 80s when it started getting more popular, more people started planting it, and now there's, plenty for everybody.
But there's a lot of talk about, and I know a lot of the cultural appropriation talk goes on about, should you be doing the Iboga in Central America when it comes from Africa? Should we be having any of these ceremonies in the United States? What's your perspective on that?
Yes, so I'm definitely a firm believer in having proper training to work with this medicine. So we have the blessing of our teacher to serve the medicine and have people come here. So I think that's very important. I don't like people that, have a couple of Iboga sessions and then they say, no, well, I'm going to start serving it now. Like that can get very dangerous. We've definitely seen things happen during retreat that if you haven't had a lot of experience, not so much physically where somebody's in trouble physically, but just where they're at, like you need to know how to manage those situations. And the only way to do that is to really have years of experience with working with the medicine. And so, yeah, we definitely feel the Iboga feels at home here. Funny story of how our teacher, when he chose, because he had a vision of a woman holding a torch back in Gabon during an Iboga journey, later figured out that was the Statue of Liberty. And so he took that as his call to go bring Iboga to the West, the United States. and he lived in the U.S. for several years and really wanted to get to know the culture and how us Westerners thought and what we were dealing with, and eventually got the call to start his center after being in the U.S. for 12 years or so. And what he did is he took a globe, he said, and spun it twice, and each time he put his finger down, it was on Costa Rica. So that's the spot he went. So he felt the medicine was at home here, so that's definitely good enough for us.
That's interesting. I have the same experience with the wind work. The winds of spirit, and if I'm out of line, they'll like wind slap me, and they'll get me back in shape. And I can do a number of things and open up the page to the same wind that I was just talking about, or the same thing. So if you listen to, once you are in tune with yourself and you start to listen to the signs, you certainly have access to them all. So tell us, we're kind of running short on time, although this is is there something that I haven't asked you that you'd like to answer?
Oh yeah, good question. You were talking about addiction and the spiritual aspect of addiction. I can't really think of a question per se, but that's a really good point. Is our spirit takes a lot of cues from our mind, and so if our mind isn't in a good place, our own spirit or our soul is just not going to be happy, and that's especially true when we beat ourselves up and we're constantly putting ourselves down or always being negative. And so the medicine is just a really powerful tool for us to see things in a positive light, or in the very least, if it's something that wasn't so good, as a learning experience of what not to do in the future. And so, what we find with, whether it's addiction or to a degree, everybody that comes here, one of the biggest gifts they can get from this medicine is how to be really aware of their mind and question their own thoughts, and really see the mind as, as a tool that has built up muscles and doing what it does a lot of. And so for many years, it's, a lot of us get into this loop of negative thinking and how we look at the world, and that's just what it does. So the Iboga is just really good at making a distinct separation there from, before and after Iboga, of how you are aware of your thoughts. And so, it's just, for those addicts and like myself, not being able to deal with my own thoughts, which led to my emotions being out of whack, which led me to making bad decisions. It really does for a lot of people start with their own mind and how they manage their own mind and what they make their own thoughts mean.
Interesting. So if anyone who's out there listening and you're struggling with either depression, anxiety, addiction, one thing that I believe both the ayahuasca and the Iboga, which he's talking really nicely about it, but I hear that it can be really difficult on your physical self the first time you do it. And it's one of the reasons I'm thinking, at 60, I don't know that I need to put my body through that. But that the SSRIs, you really don't ever, it's one thing where there is a real strong line in the sand that you have to be off of them, right? Is that for how long on the antidepressants? And
so I know there's a couple that have like a very long half-life, so that can be anywhere from 3 weeks and possibly a month, but most of them 2 weeks off of them is good enough. And so there's some way the spirit of this medicine really carries people through once they make the commitment to get here, and they have to stop those SSRIs. So many of them talk about just feeling the spirit of the plant, and that's them too, their own soul guiding them past this depression and making it here. So that happens quite often. And so the one thing I'd like to address is the physicality of the Iboga journey. You're right, it's definitely a very deep physical cleanse, but it's never more than anybody can handle. The medicine seems to not give us more than we need. But on the other end of that, you just feel so very clean for a long period afterwards, and very, very, we have a lot of people that come in with different pains, and that's not even the reason they come here, different chronic pains and, the shoulder or arthritis, things like that. And the medicine is very good at relieving those pains.
And what about any success stories with various types of cancers or other types of physical illnesses, or is it more of an emotional plant?
Yeah.
Which are connected, so.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. We are very cautious about telling people, that this is going to help or especially cure their cancer. So we try and let them know, I wouldn't come here specifically for that. Like you're saying, I would come here to work on the emotional and your energetic self, which, there's such strong signals that come from the mind that can bring about disease or also relieve it, that to really look at that. Our teacher, I remember asking him about that, could you cure cancer? And he said, definitely, but not just with Iboga, different herbs and things he knows about, if somebody was in Gabon where everything was at. But yeah, we would be cautious about, trying to, we definitely wouldn't mislead anybody with that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I had a client with who had 4-stage breast cancer, and she kept saying, I'd ask her what she needed, and I need you to, to cure me. And I was tell her that I could heal with her, and healing doesn't necessarily mean a cure. It might be the end of your journey here, and certainly these plant medicines can help you become more vastly aware of, that this is just a little drop in the bucket anyway, I would imagine, in terms of experience. So tell people how they can find your clinic and, how they could start a conversation if they were thinking that this might be for them or their family members.
Yeah, thank you. So our website is ibogawellness.com. And on there, we have an 800 number for anybody that would like to reach out. And you could also email info@Iboga Wellness or Levi at Iboga Wellness, Levi at ibogawellness.com. And we would send you a complete retreat overview of everything that happens during the week, the pricing. There's a couple medical questionnaires on there. That's very simple, yes, no, fill in a couple descriptions. And the main thing we're looking for is that people really want to do some good work like this. Just like anything in life, if we've had a couple people that have snuck through the years that their spouse sent them or their parents sent them, you gotta get it together, or we're done. And so they come, they're not doing it for themselves, but they're doing it to save this relationship or something. So that doesn't work. People, if they really need to come for themselves, and if they do that and are open to learning from the medicine, and like you said, willing to do the work afterwards, then this medicine just works so very consistently. But any questions, feel free to email or call. And definitely, we definitely don't try and pressure anybody into coming here. We really want people that really want to be here.
Well, sometimes those people who think they're only coming for somebody else have an experience where that's healing too, in their own, realization of that as well. So again, I don't think there are any experiences that don't count. Well, what a wonderful place you have. I was looking at the website. If you're curious, you should go look at the website and see how soothing the pictures look and all of that. How far are you? Like, you're right in Costa Rica, or is it like a long drive from the airport, or?
Actually, we're really close. We're about 25 minutes from the Liberia airport in Guanacaste, which is the Pacific Northwest region. we're at our third location now, which is on a ranch. So we have horses here and cows and sheep and monkeys live on the property. And there's a beautiful river that flows behind us. And we have hiking trails. So yeah, we're the Pacific Northwest region. We're about 15 minutes from a lot of the more beautiful beaches in Costa Rica, which we go to twice during the retreat and just hang out at the beach. And the nice thing about Costa Rican beaches is they lined with trees and they have shade, so that's really nice. But yeah, it's a really beautiful property. Just one big house that we're in, that I'm in here, that has 8 bedrooms, and then my wife and my family have another house that's just on the same property, just right outside here. And so yeah, we have groups of 5 to 7 people come in, either 2 or sometimes 3 times per month. We have retreats. And it was a couple years ago we would have retreats with 1 person, 3 people, 0 people. Now for the first time this year, we've been getting anywhere from 5 to 7 per retreat, which is our max this year. So this medicine is definitely growing and getting out.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you a lot for coming here, and I'll put links in the podcast as well, so people can learn more. And I for one, honor the work you're doing, because people need hope and they need to be able to find it in whatever way it works for them. And I always say there's one recovery, but many paths up that mountain. And I think this is a strong contender for something that is working with addicts, depression and anxiety and trauma. So thank you, Levi.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you for having me and spreading the word of Iboga.
I absolutely will, and we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
All right. Stay connected with us during the middle of the week over at the Facebook group, The Wind Clan, and also make sure to pick up your copy of Winds of Spirit, Ancient Wisdom Tools for Navigating Relationships, Health, and the Divine at your favorite bookseller. I'm Renee, the Practical Shaman, and until next time, may the blessed winds be with you.